Hello, world, and welcome back to RotoWill's DFS Building Block Show. Week 13 already. Pray to everything and anything that Saturday, like last week, does not happen again. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined by friend in life, Hayden Winks. And this week, another friend in life, Jake Seeley of The Athletic. Jake, what's going on, buddy?
I wasn't watching. Did you put that in air quotes, friend in life?
Sometimes. We make appearances on each other's pod every now and then.
Yeah, that is true. And yeah, like somebody was saying, "Hey, give me a follow. I'm a friend of yours." And like, look, I don't have friends. Come on, if you not watch me on Twitter, nobody likes me. Come on.
The difference is I actually do like drive around in normal years. Maybe even it's not even this year, even in non-normal years, and like go see my online friends because I think face-to-face and personal communication is like one of the most important aspects of life. But that's it. That's in-depth life talk. We don't have to do that right now. Hayden, how did your week 12 go amidst all the chaos?
Honestly, I already forgot. This last week was hell. I already forgot what happened. I think I played a lot of Kansas City guys on Yahoo formats, and that went well. But I don't think I had everybody aligned correctly.
I think we talked our two favorite games though. Bucks, Chiefs, we were all over, and then of course Chargers, Bills, which gave me some skepticism. That's why I dove deep and wrote an article last week for everyone. As we skipped on Friday, it was a short week for the holidays. Seems like an eternity ago already, but we're here for a fresh start. It's time anew. And the way this slate works, it seems a lot easier than last week. Maybe not as many high totals, but I think the path has already been carved for a couple of easy stacks here. Jake, have you already got a good early look at the slate? Because I know you also make appearances with other friends throughout the week.
Yeah, I do the first look with Joe Holka on Monday. So it's usually Monday. And I tell Joe this. Every Monday, I set one lineup and I leave it unless there's an injury related, just because. And it usually hits more often than not because it's like my first gut instinct.
Intuition lineup.
Yeah. So I always do that. And then I, go from there. And of course, like I said, if there's injuries or anything like that. But yeah, I've looked a couple times. Today's usually when I start going back and digging through. And I've already got some stacks. Can we just get it off the top? We already have a free square. We haven't had a free square of this level in a long time with Devontae Booker. Like, honestly, to have, he's Giovanni Bernard's first game. He's Kareem Hunt when there was no Nick Chubb that first week for that price. Like, we haven't had a $5,000 just smash him in your lineup in a while.
And of course, this year running back, it's a little more complicated too, since 4K, they raised the minimum price. So Booker, not necessarily minimum, but of course, a 20-touch prospect that we expect him to finish as in a terrific spot as a 9.5 road favorite. So we would also expect the Raiders, as they've shown in the past, whenever they have a big lead, to just lean on the run and take Derek Carr out of the game completely. Hayden, what were you about to say on it?
Yeah, he played 60% of the snaps in his 3 starts last year, or DeAndre Washington did, and this is the same role that Devontae Booker is going to be in. And Jalen Richard has just been not playing at all. So even if he does come in, it would only be on like passing downs. But like what you said, as 9.5 point favorites, we're expecting a lot of runs here. So I think that Devontae Booker probably projects for close to 20 rushes, plenty of touchdown equity, and that's why he's such a good play at 5,500.
I don't know if that's your decision point as we jump in here, Jake. I'll still kick it to you first. But as always, we're going to start with an interesting slate. I'll talk about it more on my decision point. But we like to begin with the one conundrum, the one landmine we keep coming across when attempting to build lineups this week. So I'm interested to hear what yours is before all of this Devontae Booker news occurred.
It's really coming down to the Dalvin Cook versus Derrick Henry. That's mine. It's just I want to get one of them, despite the fact that they're so price heavy on both sides. You really kind of hamstring yourself if you want an expensive wide receiver stat. I think that, it's even on not them too. It's, do I want to do it? Do I want to do either one of them and then know that I can't go with the Seahawks with Russell Wilson stack, that I can't go with, even if I wanted to play the Deshaun Watson, even he's a little outpriced because Brandon Cooks has come around where his price isn't that much of a discount. If I wanted to play the Justin Herbert game with Keenan Allen, it just takes away Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. So I think it's not even necessarily between those two. I think the biggest situation I'm dealing with here is, do I go heavy with the running back and then just have to go with value versus get that guy? I think everybody does. I want to get Derrick Henry in there. And it's not the December. It's
right.
I've talked about this before. It's like the December it's kind of like the Madden curse. It's because people only remember when it's happened. And it is true that Derrick Henry is better in December, but because defenses are worn down, it's the same thing he does to defenses in the regular season in week 4 for the fourth quarter. This is basically like it's the fourth quarter of a game. So I say that with the fact that he's also got a terrific schedule for the next 4 weeks. So that's why. It's not just, it's December. Like Zach Ertz a couple of years ago when it was December, Zach Ertz.
I see them, and I appreciate them. We will definitely get to them throughout the show. Quickly, though, I actually discussed this as well on the Roto-Grinders Pick 6 on Wednesday night with Rich Rebar and Dean. And I said that I rostered Derrick Henry last week, wrote it up in the article as well, not because it was November. It was November 29th, but because he was a terrific leverage off of Dalvin Cook in a high total. And that's the way it looks again. I do wonder if it's still a better matchup to double stack Ryan Tannehill and fade Derrick Henry. And if that's the case, are you fading Henry and Dalvin Cook? Like, are you just left sinking if you go away from the 2 expensive backs and then pay down to the middle options? A lot who I like, honestly. That's where I'm at right now on Friday. But hey, what are your thoughts on Cook and Henry?
This is going to be my decision point as well, what to do with these 2 backs. And Dale, you just hit it. The reason why I'm a little skeptical of playing it, obviously they're very high priced and they're not like the Christian McCaffrey check down backs. So you have to get the game script right to a certain degree or the touchdown. So that makes it the floor is a little lower with these type of guys compared to the McCaffrey roles that we're used to last year. The second thing is Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. The passing games are set up for eruption spots as well. I want to play Justin Jefferson. I want to play Adam Thielen. I want to play AJ Brown. I'll sprinkle in some Corey Davis as well. So do I pay up at the high price tag for these running backs that obviously project really well, but they're also carrying a lot of ownership and you can get direct leverage off of them for some wide receivers that are in terrific spots. Both of these teams that they're playing are missing cornerbacks and safeties. They can't rush the passer very well either. So that's kind of the decision point. I'm kind of leaning towards building more tournament lineups with the receivers rather than the running backs right now.
I want to, Scandal Randall mentions it. I want to play Ferkser and Kyle Rudolph as well. That's the unique way to double stack these games. You can get off one of the receivers, like even Tannehill, Corey Davis, and Ferkser. I understand fading AJ Brown is a scary prospect, but when a guy is averaging 4 catches per game, like sure he can burn me, but I think I'm fine with that. Getting the ancillary options, just like last week for Chiefs game, that always go overlooked. The Sammy Watkins, the Rob Gronkowski, double stacking the high total, and then choosing elsewhere with your leftover salary.
Yeah, so the one thing that I forget who tweeted earlier today is one of our friends in the industry, they're Rebars of the world or Pat Thorm or somebody, but was saying that in the games where we've had a 4 touchdown game from Derrick Henry or even a 3 touchdown game, and this Tannehill still finishes as a QB1 all the time, except for one game where it was 300 yards. He just didn't happen to have touchdowns because they kept kicking field goals in that game. So it hasn't been like if Henry hits, you don't get Tannehill in the passing game. The one that you brought up that I'm actually, and I get your opinion on this to see if you think I'm crazy, but I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but I'm fading Ferkser because one thing, this is what I tweeted out earlier, is I know everybody thinks he's a smash, but since week 10, the last 3 games, the snaps, routes, and targets, Jonnu obviously 152, 56, and 12, but Swaim is 123 snaps to Ferkser 69, only 23 routes to 41 for Ferkser. So we know he's the pass catcher, but still only 9 targets for Ferkser. And it starts back. Let's go back to Jonnu. Only 12 in 3 games. If AJ Brown and Corey Davis are both healthy, Jonnu's just been a non-factor. And I've been off Jonnu as a whole. I don't think that Ferkser's a great play as in a smash. Like the $2,500, obviously min price, but I think he's the same as Jonnu. It's a touchdown or you're screwed because he's not putting up yards. It's going to be 30, 40 yards and a touchdown you're hoping for.
I will say that is how I treated Kyle Rudolph last week. Wrote it in the article as well, that even at his best game, I didn't think he's someone who was going to bury you. So if all the ownership went in that direction, it's a player, as we talk about weekly, a tight end, a cheap one that is going to 25 or 30% roster like Rudolph did. It's one you have to get off of and just look at similar price points that are not being focused on. And so sure, we have Rudolph, we have Ferkser, but Ferkser's someone that if he is coming in that high owned, then sure, I'm definitely getting off of as well for all the reasons you mentioned.
I'm moving up to Jordan Akins. That's where I'm moving because the opportunity, like Akins earlier this year before being hurt was already getting opportunities, and now no Will Fuller. I'm not super high in QT, but I think you're going to see a lot more 12. I think what's the worst case scenario is watch Akins get 50 or 60 yards, and then Darren freaking Fells is going to steal the touchdown like always.
Do you have any thoughts? I'll start with you on this, Jake, actually, because this person isn't expensive, of course, but Sam still asked about Miles Sanders, which is in the no man land of ranges between the Devontae Bookers of the world and the Dalvin Cooks of the world. So let's say you spend up at these wide receiver positions, you have middling salary left, not enough to get up to Cook, but still enough to where you want to pay more than Montgomery and Booker, both who we'll talk about in depth as well going on. But Sanders, how do you feel with that leftover salary? And honestly, a good matchup in the same one that Montgomery took advantage of last week.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I actually wrote him up. And then there was also in my rankings column this week, I'm going to read you the question. He says, really on Sanders, that O-line is atrocious. Wentz isn't himself. Coach Peterson's making matters worse by giving no touches to Sanders. I know they have an easier matchup, but I don't know if it matters with the offense right now. And you know what I said? Everything you just said fits David Montgomery last week. That's it. It's a pure matchup play. The floor is obviously what's everything that's going wrong with the Eagles, but what's the difference between Sanders and Montgomery going into last week? Nothing. Montgomery didn't even have 20 touches in that game. It's just about the matchup.
Hayden, any leans on Miles Sanders? Any takes?
I'm just worried that Boston Scott's going to actually mix in. We don't know what Jordan Howard, if they activate him eventually. Miles Sanders just kind of been struggling himself. So I get why the Eagles are not so optimistic about him right now. He's dropping so many passes, but Miles Sanders is so explosive and he has proven that he can catch some passes. He's been so bad at it this year. I don't know what's going on. So there's clearly upside. I'm worried that the floor and the median projection is not there yet.
Scandal brings up my point, and my decision point is that, and that is how risky do we want to get at quarterback? Because like 2 weeks ago, it's another week where we can afford to take some chances. We have Josh Allen on Monday. We have Mahomes on Sunday night. We have Kyler, who we're not even worried about because defenses are playing him differently, plus the banged up shoulder, 10 total carries the past 2 weeks. Justin Herbert's the real only one that could sink us, in my opinion, who is but even then, he's playing Belichick, who has historically shut down rookie quarterbacks. Also, Anthony Lynn's going to get just circles out coached. So I think you could afford to take some chances at quarterback. And my question, do y'all have anyone expensive that you're eyeing that could sink you if we choose to pay down at that position this week? I didn't mean to go ahead, Hayden, first. I didn't mean to throw that on you. I know it's a question you have to actually look up real quick.
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers is in a good spot as well. He's been dominating. His touchdown rate is near all-time highs. Devontae Adams has been absolutely balling out. I think it helps that Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan, and MVS are all going to be out there because, last year and the previous years, these guys were doing very little at all. So I think that you actually have a secondary stack as well between just one of those three with Devontae Adams. So I think that Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, I would go with Tonyan just to fill that tight end spot to get correlated at tight end. I think that stack is pretty interesting. That would be one that I'm a little worried about fading. But like you said, he's expensive and he doesn't have much rushing equity at all. So he would have to throw 4 touchdowns to get absolutely buried. But I think that he has a very good chance at 300 yards or 3 touchdowns this week.
Yeah, I think the stack that could burn everybody is arguably going to be the most popular. You brought up Kyle Rudolph before. I think everybody is on Kirk Cousins right now. Everybody's on Kirk Cousins because of how he's been playing, honestly, and he's getting Thielen back after the COVID situation with last week. But one thing that's been true this year is that all three of them, Cook, Thielen, and Jefferson, very rarely overlap all three. There's usually 2. It's not Cook smashed. Nobody did anything at the wide receiver position. It's usually Cook and Thielen, Cook and Jefferson, Jefferson and Thielen. And there's a few games where all three of them do hit. But for all three of them to hit, we're talking about this team has to put up 40 points. So you love Kirk Cousins, you love the receivers because there's such a concentrated volume going to the 2 of them. And that's what's so appealing. But I feel because Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, if you can get it, people, if they can't get it, are going to go right to Kyle Rudolph and either drop out Jefferson or Thielen. If this is a Cook game and he rebounds this week and the team is up early, which is a very distinct possibility in this matchup, I just feel like this one could be the vulnerable spot. And in tournaments with what I expect to be the ownership, I'm probably staying away from the Vikings passing game altogether.
Hayden, what do you have for Cousins ownership right now? I thought he would come in middle of the road, 8 to 10%. But if he is going to be 12 plus, that makes me angry actually, because I was ready to fire him up too.
Well, I think just quarterback ownership just across the board is going to be super flat. I don't see really anyone that's going to get above 15%. I would guess Cousins is closer to 5%. There's just so many options that are just like kind of even across the board.
If he's down to 5%, then you got to play it.
Yeah. I just don't see a quarterback this week where you're like, okay, Patrick Mahomes is going to be 15 to 20%. Like maybe do I start fading that? I don't think that we're going to have any of those quarterbacks. I don't think you're looking at ownership for making quarterback decisions this week, at least.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll talk about that more as we move along here. As always, we're going to pull up the RotoWorld DFS toolkit, make a tournament lineup together, spit out some optimal projections, and then probably fight a few projections as well. So, hey, go ahead and you can start us with we'll have the highest exposure towards this week.
So I like this range in the 5,000s for the running backs, and I'm kind of having a tough time deciding between which one. And it's Devontae Booker, it's David Montgomery, and it's Myles Gaskin. And all of them own the backfield, and all of them are in okay spots, and none of them are difference makers themselves as running backs, and they're all priced the same. So it's kind of hard to distinguish which one. I think I'm leaning towards Myles Gaskin just because we're not going to get the news of him being active probably until Saturday, but it's trending like he's going to be the only guy that's going to be available. That means nobody this week has been touting Myles Gaskin. And before he was injured, he was balling out, had all the workload in the world, and they're obviously in a great spot. No DJ Reader. The Bengals are not playing any of their veterans. They've released him, traded him away. So I think Myles Gaskin is somebody that I'm going to have a pretty high ownership, like especially relative to the field.
What can't disagree. I was gonna say, if you want to pay up and do like a Seattle stack, I mean, you can get all three. That's the thing. You can play all three, because some people, and I'm not saying you are, Hayden. I'm not saying anything but some people out there are like, well, everybody's going to be on Devontae Booker. I don't want the chalk. Well, sometimes the chalk is fine when it's this level. When it's this level of chalk, and David Montgomery is maybe that's the chalk you fade. I wouldn't fade the Booker one because it's not just what you mentioned earlier, Hayden. It's the fact that also the Jets have allowed about 20 plus touches to almost every single running back that's ever faced them. So the Booker one is, I would not get off Booker. And if you want to play Booker Gaskin, I love that combination. I have a couple lineups already where I have all three of them, and because it lets you do more at the wide receiver position. If you're going to pay up and you don't want to go to Cook or Henry, the one is, and we don't get the benefit of the pricing from last week, and I don't get the ownership low like we did last week, but Austin Eckler, I think all the concerns about Justin Herbert not checking down to him as much as anybody else did went right out the window because, I mean, what do you have, like 15 targets in his first game back?
16 and a 33% target share.
Which is just absurd. And that's with Keenan Allen still getting his. And by the way, Mike Williams is probably going to be taken out of this game.
Oh, yeah. And I even noticed this in the RotoWorld football, that the reason why he's been dumping off more Herbert the past two games because he's been getting blitzed more. And so if Belichick follows that trend and just sends a bunch of defenders, then of course he'll just continue dumping off to Eckler. So even if Eckler doesn't get there like his ceiling last week, his floor is still incredibly high.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to go back to the David Montgomery thing, I'm looking right now, and ownership projection has him as the only other running back besides Dalvin Cook clearly over 20%.
So this is skipping a segment. I'll just do my piece really quick. I think David Montgomery is my largest fade for the week. Okay. And I know, Hayden, we tussled a little bit on the podcast about this, so you can respond here. I just think the national spotlight blew it way out of proportion. Of course, opened the game when everyone's watching as well and paying attention with a 57-yard run. Still only 11 carries. People cite that he received every running back touch outside of Cordarrelle Patterson, but that's what he was doing before he got injured as well, and it never mattered then. So I don't know all of a sudden why it matters now. So assuming I'm correct and that he's going to come in 25+% rostered, like that, to me, in a price range I like of a lot of other options, makes him an easy fade.
Well, I think the one thing with David Montgomery right now is it's kind of hard to tell what the ownership is going to come in because now we have to factor in Devontae Booker and Myles Gaskin, who weren't available 2 days ago. So I think maybe David Montgomery would have been 20, 25%. Maybe now he's closer to 10%. I think that's pretty fair, especially the Lions. Obviously, they were one of the easiest matchups, maybe the easiest matchup for running backs. And they placed Danny Shelton, their defensive tackle, on injured reserve. So like everything's pointing in the right directions for David Montgomery to have an okay game. But unlike some of the other running backs, David Montgomery doesn't have like 40-yard touchdowns ever. Like he had the 157-yard run, and I think that was probably his longest run like since high school. And that's the one difference you don't get with David Montgomery. So I think Myles Gaskin, Devontae Booker, David Montgomery, I'm guessing Devontae Booker is going to be the highest owned out of that group, but I don't think that he's that much different of a play compared to the other two guys.
Myles Gaskin for sure, and under-owned, I imagine, than the others, because no one's going to be paying too close attention on Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern for this deadline to hit and for him to get activated with only Patrick Laird available behind him. And I guess if some people consider Lynn Bowden a running back, like Pro Football Reference does, but he's not really being used at that position. So whatever. It's just Myles Gaskin.
the team drafted him as a running back and gave up on that project in 2 months. I'm not expecting Lynn Bowden just to go.
If it's only him and Gaskin and Laird, like Gaskin clearly is going to get 85+% of the touches. So if that's the case in a terrific game script, even if Fitzpatrick builds the lead like last week, 34 pass attempts to 10 running back carries through 3 quarters, like the Gaskin will have that DeAndre Washington role from last week, where he just pounds through for the rest of the game. So
that's what you would need if you're so Gaskin doesn't play, for everybody thinking about Laird. This team does not want Laird running the ball. Like it's just, hey, you're their pass catcher. We don't care. It might be you need that kind of volume again, like the 35 to 10, even potentially worse than that for maybe like a JD McKissick type game. So I think that Laird, if out and people are waiting, I would pretty much just stay away from Laird. Where's the ceiling even with him?
Oh, no. Yeah, there's no ceiling there. And Sam asked, can you stack Parker and Gaskin? I personally don't think so, because that was the one issue, is that Gaskin was on the field getting all of the touches, but the Dolphins offense in general was not using the running backs in the passing game, a lot like the Texans, whereas we can cite their targets and their usage, but it doesn't really matter because they're just not getting much. So I think you go Parker and Gesicki if you're going to double stack Fitzpatrick and not Gaskin, and that would be leverage off Gaskin if for whatever reason he comes in over 10% after Saturday's news.
Yeah, I'd keep these guys. They're good one-offs just in general, just because – I mean, I'm not sure if I would be trying to stack Ryan Fitzpatrick or Tua right now, just because we don't have, like, they're rotating the second receiver. Gesicki has, like, some ceiling in theory, but he hasn't done much with it, honestly.
Jake, let's kick it to you for your large entry tournament dart. We have our chalk pieces here ready to go. Let's get some intelligent contrarian plays.
So I'm going to give you, I went wide receiver slot. I called it like a slot theme this week because there's 3. So I'll give you the contrarian one at the end. So it might not even be that much contrarian because Cooper Kupp was the one, and everybody's like, oh, well, outside the huge target games, Cooper Kupp, well, you just abuse the opponents in the slot this week. It's similar to CeeDee Lamb's not on this slate, but that's why I like CeeDee Lamb. Although you could consider that contrarian if you're going to play the showdown, the captain mode. I mean, against Baltimore, nobody ever wants to start anybody against Baltimore. Well, hey, guess what? They can't stop slot wide receivers. Continuing with this theme, Hunter Renfrow. So everybody, and why I bring him up as the contrarian is because everybody's watching Nelson Aguilar, and everybody's saying, oh, if Nelson Aguilar is out, boom, Henry Ruggs. I don't actually care about Henry Ruggs, and I'm a Henry Ruggs guy. He had the number 1 opportunity earlier this year. And he struggled with it, and he's struggling with something that, and I'm going to bring this full circle to something I said at the beginning of the season, is the reason I was off Bryan Edwards this year is because asking a rookie who still needs to develop, which Henry Ruggs still needs to do in some ways, to play outside, getting number 1 corner attention is going to struggle. You can't do that with most rookies. So now, because Aguilar became a thing and Bryan Edwards was out, Henry Ruggs got kicked into that position and struggled with it. So again, I'll give you the thing that Keenan Allen, huge game against them, but it's Keenan Allen. So how about Jacoby Myers, 12 for 169 in week 9, and then 11 for 112 in week 7 for Cole Beasley. Play your slot wide receivers. Well, I mean, play most people against the Jets, but play the slot wide receivers. If you're going to go deep, it's super savings to get Hunter Renfrow here.
Yeah, and the reason why that's happening is Brian Poole, who was one of the best corners last year and the Jets' best corner in the slot this year, he's been placed on injured reserve. So that's why you're seeing extra targets going funneled that way as well.
Now I'm trying to share the screen and I'm doing a very bad job producing. Okay. So I'll go ahead and lock that in, Hayden, while you give us, which one? Hayden, I'll let you pick which one of the 3 you want of that group. We had someone mention up here earlier to talk the Patriots offense. So that would technically be talking the Patriots offense if we go ahead and lock in Jacoby.
Is that what you want? Was Jacoby one of your guys, or were you leaning Hunter Renfrow?
I would take Jacoby over Hunter Renfrow.
Okay.
Just because I don't think game script gets out of hand for that one. I think it's going to be a Devontae Booker game. The Jets probably do clap back, as I will. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to take the torch here and say Denzel Mims is my favorite large.
I was just about to say, if you want to bring it back on the opposite side
Yes.
instead, go to Denzel Mims. The one thing is he's somebody else. I was concerned about Denzel Mims. I was wrong. I wasn't expecting to see Denzel Mims relevant until next year, because if you watch a lot of his college tape, he's a 9 guy, but also he ran into coverage a lot. Like, he doesn't know how to stack corners. And that was my issue with Denzel Mims, is like, hey, I'll talk about him next year. I want to see him develop. Well, the Jets, this is weird. The Jets are smart. They're smart with Denzel Mims, because they're doing similar to what the Seahawks did with DK Metcalf, but a little bit different. They're asking Denzel Mims to stop running those deep routes and start to run some, over the middle of the field, cut off your routes, and stop running into stacked coverage that he's creating. So I'm with you. If you're going to bring this back on the opposite side, I would go Mims over Perriman and Crowder.
And they just keep giving him 50-50 balls every single week. At least 7 targets in every game, except the one game against the Chiefs, where every starter for both sides got benched midway through because the Chiefs just absolutely routed them. I absolutely love Denzel Mims. More end zone targets than Brashad Perriman since Jamison Crowder came back, but Mims has not scored a touchdown, whereas Perriman has scored multiple times. So
right.
I still think there's some positive regression due for Mims as well. I keep playing him, and he will continue to be, like last week, under rostered, because he's just slyly sneaking away with tons of air yards which are actually accurate, and tons of red zone targets until he finally pops one of these games. And I think this is finally the matchup to do so.
I agree. Betting on rookies in the second half of their seasons is usually the right move. So I'm all in on rookie receivers.
And Hayden, what about your large entry tournament? So we have those. We have our mini stack now, skinny stack. What's your thinking for large entry tournaments?
Well, I was going to go super cheap guy, and I was going to talk up Josh Reynolds, because I think that he's fairly priced, and he's popped off, and he's the deep threat in a perfect matchup. But since we've already dropped down in pricing a couple times here, I'll just go to Robert Woods, who is in an excellent spot. Last year, 18 targets, 12 targets against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals just run out there a lot of man coverage. That's easy to diagnose for Jared Goff. And Robert Woods has been balling recently. He has a ceiling. He has a 100-yard bonus potential. They use him on these like weird reverses and jet sweeps near the goal line. So there's tons of opportunity for Robert Woods. I am not scared of Patrick Peterson. Robert Woods was destroying Pat Pete last year already. So I want to be in on Robert Woods. So if we needed to save money, I would say Josh Reynolds for a lot of the same reasons. But also Robert Woods is only 5,900. That was pretty surprising to me.
To both of your points, since Jake, you mentioned Cup, I will say that I prefer the more expensive option in tournaments on both sites. So Cup is 200 more on DraftKings. I imagine that actually will dwindle his ownership a little more. Thus, I play Cup on DraftKings, and I play Woods on FanDuel, where he's 500 to 600 more, and I just think he's the outright better play anyway. So that's how I would dictate the ownership there on the sites.
I like both, and I always feel like if I always go with the stack, Jared Goff being Jared Goff is ready to burn me at any single time. But if you want to do even that's one of the most cost efficient to get both wide receivers to go Goff, Woods, Cup, and still do a lot of things with your lineups. With you, probably don't even have to go for a Mims.
Yeah, I'm building it over here. How did Deontay Johnson get in here? Whatever. Just let me come over here real quick.
Well, while you're looking for that, I'm just going to throw a super dart throw as well down in the Denzel Mims range, because I think a lot of people missed this. Kaderil Hodge was better than Higgins, and now he's out. And Higgins being out this. And for everybody that just saw what happened with Jarvis Landry, there's two things here. Is Baker Mayfield gets tunnel vision. We know that. But also, Jarvis Landry doesn't have the best matchup that people think he does this week. And I'm not saying, Rashad Higgins is going to smash. But, we're talking super, super, super dart throws. We're talking 1% probably ownership. If you want to go down to 4,000, you need to make savings. Like, I have a lineup where I have Derrick Henry, Russell Wilson, and Tyler Lockett, so I need a $4,000 guy. I threw Higgins in there.
With these options, go ahead, Hayden.
I think that the Browns guys are going to catch some ownership just because this is the highest total game of the week right there. And I think that finding the unique way to stack up this game, and I think that he's one of the ways to do that. I think Austin Hooper also makes some sense, even though he's not running nearly as many routes as what you'd think. He's like, I think last week him and Harrison Bryant ran the same amount of routes, which was bizarre. But I don't think that you just only need to play the best plays in that game. Like, all of these guys have some big play potential. We've seen both of these offenses just go for 40-yard touchdowns all the time. So
isn't double stacking Baker, like even Landry and Higgins, isn't that the contrarian way to do it? Because if you're telling me, you have it on your side again, but if you're telling me like Nick Chubb is the contrarian way, of course I'll take that route. But I figured Chubb would be the highest owned player for the Browns.
He will be, which is interesting because he's priced all the way up at 7,700, which is a little aggressive. But yeah, I think they'll still click his name the most. I'm not going to be playing any Baker Mayfields like at all. I don't think he has enough ceiling.
Where do you have them? I'm looking at FTN because I have theirs. They have Kareem Hunt actually barely in front of Nick Chubb
for ownership
because the price difference. I think he's like 300 cheaper.
Yeah. And if that's the case, and the reason I was looking at this because I'm looking at what you have left here. Nick Chubb in the flex is what I'm looking at right here. Like that's what
I was going to click too. By the way, yeah.
I'm like, oh look, 7,900 left, and Nick Chubb's at 7,700. Perfect.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I mean, I'd probably try to find a way to skinny stack Chubb because I'm interested in that Titans game all around. But I thought Chubb would be higher owned. So if that's the case, yeah, I'll play Chubb everywhere. And that would also allow me to, like I mentioned earlier, perhaps fade Henry and Dalvin Cook and attack those passing games, or at least the passing game for the Titans instead, because I think that's the sexier side through the air than the Browns.
I would try to watch where A.J. Brown comes around because there's going to be his ownership's right now depressed because, the new injury that popped up on Thursday, and it was a hip, and it wasn't the same Thursday situation as past. So watch where it comes because Cleveland's, like you talk about not having anybody to play out there in that secondary. I mean, this should be an A.J. Brown just destroy them week.
Yeah, so NBA Rigged, who joins in every week, also asked this question. This is the same thing I thought about earlier today. This is how Mike Leone ETR took down a tournament when all those guys were cheap whenever Jordan Akins was out and you could roster Darren Fells for 2,500. He just rostered all four guys and said, screw it, like I'm onslaughting this. My only concern for Minnesota is that Cooks or Thielen and Jefferson are more expensive than Cooks and Fuller were. Because remember, that's when Cooks, everyone got scared because that dud he laid. And then people were still slowly getting back on him, including the algorithm on DraftKings for his price point. Whereas Thielen is like 7,300, Jefferson is 6,900 the other way around. So they're pretty hefty. Like they're pretty expensive. So it is hard to stuff all three in there. I'm interested. I really am.
I'm not gonna play Kirk Cousins either. He has a couple games where he goes crazy, but those are usually like in closer matchups. I'm not really expecting the Jaguars to keep pace in this game. So I want to be picking like one of Thielen or Jefferson as one-off plays to get off of Dalvin Cook rather than like going full in on Kirk Cousins, Thielen, Rudolph, and all of those guys. I would rather just play the one-offs because I think that Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen can hit 25 DraftKings points like no problem at all.
Well, so the question here too is actually 5 of the last 7 games, Kirk Cousins 30+ attempts. The 2 games were Green Bay and I forget the other one where he did. So he's passing more than this statement assumes. Not at the beginning if you take his entire season, but if you take what Kirk Cousins has been doing lately and being hot. So the one thing I will say is if you want to, I'll double check his ownership. I'm expecting it to be low again because nobody ever wants to use him. If you're guessing, I'm staying in this game. And no, okay, finally we're getting James Robinson up close to 20%. I was going to say, if he's still down at like 13-14%, like just the James Robinson disrespect this year has been absurd. I said this about weeks. Was it with you, John? I might have even said it. I say, like, if you strip the name off the back of the jersey and put Fournette there, people would have treated him like a top 5 running back this entire season.
You did say that. Yep.
That's very true.
I will be playing this game. Again, I'm going to let percentages play itself out, but I'm very interested in this game because I have zero trust in the Vikings defense as well. To both of your points, yes, the Vikings have thrown more the past 2 games out of flukes. That first half against the Cowboys, 6 penalties, 2 lost fumbles, forced them to throw in the second half. Last week, that miserable third quarter, 2 fumbles on back-to-back snaps that Jeremy Chin returned both. And then they had to throw in the fourth quarter. So yes, clearly fluky situations that changed and erupted game script. But I think it could honestly happen again. Like Glennon isn't good. going to go on a soapbox about Glennon, but he did throw at the league's second highest downfield rate last year. Like he said, he's going to air it out because he wasn't sure when he was going to start again. He actually did air it out. And if we have DJ Shark in this game, like that's my run back, not James Robinson. Like I'm attacking the secondary with the player that's going to go completely unrostered, who I think is the best play overall on Jacksonville's side. So I would love to double stack Cousins and bring it back with DJ Shark in an instant.
Oh, I still love James Robinson, but I'll take DJ Chark.
Sure, yeah.
Second. So the other thing I was going to bring up is for the assumptions about Jacksonville. Did you know Baker Mayfield since week 4 is the first quarterback to not attempt 31+ passes against Jacksonville? So I'm not saying for the assumptions out there that's like, oh, Jacksonville sucks, everybody just runs it down their throats and it's over. It's because they are essentially, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, because that goes back to week 40, 36, 35, 31, 43, 32, 34, 46 passing attempts. It doesn't matter because Jacksonville does this to themselves, where the other side of it is usually it's usually an aggressive offense no matter what's happening, just because they allow it to be so easy.
And they're missing, real quick, the Jaguars are missing CJ Henderson, DJ Hayden, and it looks like Sidney Jones is not going to play this week. They played a lot of man coverage on the perimeter, and they're going to be with 3 backups. So
Cousins, did we just pull ourselves back into Cousins? Did we just do that?
I forgot to mention.
I'm using them as like mini correlations. Like I want like DJ Chark with Justin Jefferson, like on top of builds that I'm making in other games. That's how.
Are you going Jefferson over Thielen then?
Yeah, I'm going Thielen. I'm going Thielen over Jefferson. I'm definitely going Thielen over Jefferson.
I'm going to be like 50-50.
Cousins has the highest passer rating against man coverage this year, and the Jags run the 6th highest rate of man coverage, I believe. I want to talk about this game before we get into unique stacks here, because there's a lot going on both sides. Any takes on the Colts backfield? So I will say that outside of DJ Shark, Jonathan Taylor actually is one of my favorite large entry tournament plays as well. And I love it even more that Devontae Booker is going to start, because now Taylor will go completely overlooked in what I think is going to be a garbage game script in favor of the Colts. Like they're just going to douse the Texans without Will Fuller and without DeAndre Hopkins to throw to in the interim. So if that's the case, we know how poor the Texans have been against the run, like second most rushing yards per game. And so I'm willing to take a chance on Taylor. Of course, it could be Nyheim Hines, but the fact that Wright came out and said Jordan Wilkins has been banged up, they are clearly skeptical to give him a heavy dose of touches, as they have done the past 3 games, no more than 9 in each of those. So yeah, I think Taylor could win in garbage time, and he would be an amazing play if so.
Yeah, with 5,700. I like Taylor too. Is the biggest thing is his ownership as of right now is super low projected, because everybody's scared. Everybody's scared of Frank Reich, and that's because before he even said that Jonathan Taylor, like, oh, he's starting to look better. Before he even said that Jordan Wilkins is banged up. Let's go back 2 weeks when he said that's how we roll, to the whole statement of how he uses his running back. So I think that perception of being scared about this is why you're going to have people come off of it. Now, if Jonathan Taylor was in the 10 to 12% range or even higher, I'd be completely avoiding it, because we don't know what's going to happen. But if you're going to give me 5 or lower percentage, I'm with you, John.
I'll give it to you in 1 second, Hayden. I will say, we talked about this early on, Jake, that for better or worse, tournament players only spike 38% of the time, I believe, of their entries. And you just, you spike high and then you keep on going, and that's how you stay positive ROI. But like I have zero fear. For better or worse, zero fear with players like that. That's why I played Gronk last week. I've been burnt on Demarcus Robinson over Sammy Watkins a couple times, but it's also helped me out as well. So Jonathan Taylor is like one of my favorite types of plays for this slate as well. Hayden, your thoughts on the Colts backfield?
Yeah, we don't care about meeting projections for DFS tournaments. So Jonathan Taylor's right in the mix. He's going to be 5% or less, just because of all the guys we were just talking about that are going to be in the 15 to 25 to 30% range that are priced right next to him. And I also think that includes whoever starts for the Texans. That also includes Kareem Hunt. That also includes Wayne Gallman, Kenyon Drake. All of these guys have a path. Chris Carson, I'll also throw in the mix there. They're all priced right next to these other guys that we're all talking up. So this range, like any one of these guys can pop off, and they're all going to be at like less than 5 to 10%.
I have a feeling I'll get on that range, but it won't be in at least not all of, one of the 3 guys that everyone else will focus on, like Devontae Booker, David Montgomery. But I definitely played 3 or 2 of them. Anyways, Jake, your favorite stacks and or unique stacks for this slate?
Favorite stack is, I told you, I already did it. It's the Seahawk one against the Giants. I don't care what James Bradbury is saying. I don't care how confident James Bradbury is. And now this is also somebody that I've been saying the entire year is a concerning matchup. You need 2 James Bradburys to limit DK Metcalf. So if you can find a way to smash that in there, you're not getting anything else. You're going to play in the $4,000, $5,000 range. But because of the Montgomerys, the Gaskins, and everything we talked about, I think that's great. And we mentioned the other one. I was going to say the more contrarian, the one more people are not going to be on, it would be the Rams one, the Woods Cup with Jared Goff, because I think that's another one. Everybody's just always terrified of Jared Goff, and for good reason. Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, you can put him in the same conversation. When it goes bad, it really goes bad. But that's why nobody is really going to play the true stack. They're probably just going to take Cup or Woods, and most of them are probably going towards Woods.
Who would you run it back with on Cardinals?
And for the which stack, the Seahawks stack or the Rams stack?
Let's go both.
For the Seahawks stack, I don't know that.
Would you not run it back?
I think I don't. I don't think I would. If I did, I would probably just hope for the volume of Shepard. Like I said, Dan Dugan for the Athletic thinks there's something wrong, and he actually missed practice, I think, on Wednesday with Darius Slayton. I mean, you can, because he's got the big play, but we're also talking about Colt McCoy. What is he, average 2 yards per attempt? So maybe you're kind of playing the Jacoby Myers. Hey, maybe he gets 13 targets, catches 9 of them, and gets you 100 yards. So that's where we're going that one. The Ram stack, obviously, you bring it back, and I would not bring it back with Christian Kirk. I would just dive down and bring it back to Andy Isabella with no Larry Fitzgerald. I would take that gamble because he was out there 56% of the snaps, I think, last week. And Kirk's been struggling with tough coverage, and he's going to be the one that gets the tougher coverage.
Also, like we've seen DeAndre Hopkins targets and catches come down as Kyler hasn't been afforded the time or maybe afforded the shoulder to throw it deep. So more shallow targets for Andy Isabella. Also, after everyone soured on him, as we know, the best spots to get on for DFS. Hayden, what about your stack for this weekend?
So my bread and butter stack is going to be the Rams one. You can do it with Kupp and Woods. I prefer Woods in this case. I am okay with Josh Reynolds. I'm okay with one of the tight ends. If this game goes right, both of these teams are like top 7 in neutral pace, and we've seen these games go nuts in the past. Jared Goff, some of his best games of his career are against the Cardinals. So, yeah, I really like that one. The one that I haven't really heard talked up, and for the right reasons going into the week, I was off of them. But the Saints are now missing Janoris Jenkins, their corner. They're missing Marcus Davenport. And Julio Jones is trending in the right direction. And we've seen Julio blow up coming off of injuries. He usually plays through them. The Falcons are still in the hunt. I think they can hang in there with the Saints. So I like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. I don't think anyone's going to play Julio Jones or Matt Ryan. I think Calvin Ridley's in an awesome spot in general. But I do think that with the Saints, they're missing like 2 of their like top 5 players right now on defense. And that's why they were so good this last month, is all these guys were healthy. That you remove that, you've seen the Saints be a little bit vulnerable to the pass game. And I mean, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin really have awesome ceilings.
I love it, especially with how cheap Matt Ryan is. At first I thought you were about to bring it with the Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, and Mike Thomas. I was like,
you'll never find me with Taysom Hill. I will continue losing money betting against him.
Falcons defense at 2,400. It's admittedly one of my favorite plays of the week. And I bet Falcons money line on Monday because just the way the Falcons defense was playing, more or less, not because of what the Falcons do on offense. So if we do surprisingly get Julio Jones back at full health, clearly like that's a bad number. Like the Falcons.
Is that your favorite cheap defense?
Right now, yes. You apparently have another one you like.
No, I was just there was
one other.
You're gonna go to your stack first, right?
Go ahead.
I was just curious.
No. Go ahead. Tell me, what are you thinking?
I like the Titans, honestly, because I always like to target. Well, here's why. So when you see these high over, this is where I usually go for defenses that are contrarian defenses. And this is where the range I'm looking for a game that people expect to get out of hand, but expect to get out of hand, and it could go wrong on one side of the ball. Well, if you're going to go wrong on one side of the ball, if you're going to go with who I just mentioned, Baker Mayfield, who loves to get tunnel vision and loves to throw turnovers, like actually even fumble the ball, it's that one. And there's the second one is if you're going to go with the Rams, Kyler Murray's banged up. Kyler Murray already takes a lot of sacks. So that's what we like. I want sacks, pressures, and turnovers. And so for those two, I don't think they're going to be very highly owned. I think mostly because people just see Arizona stay away, and then the Titans because of the high total in Vegas, and they don't score a lot in general. But that could go sideways real fast.
I also cheap like Detroit actually against Trubisky. Like, I think there's clearly a path where Trubisky can be really good, but also like if Trubisky hits, that's probably because of turnovers that allowed the Lions to score on shallow fields, or short fields. So I do like the Lions. I like the Lions defense as well. But favorite stack would be, we've already mentioned throughout the show, a Cousins double stack combination of Thielen Jefferson or Thielen and Rudolph. I'm higher on Thielen over Jefferson. Jefferson, of course, amazing player. You don't need me to tell you that. But Thielen, when they've played together, so throughout last week, 12 more red zone targets, 12 more end zone targets since week 3. Jefferson just won in each of those categories. We know they go to Thielen inside the 10-yard line. So I'm higher on Thielen than Jefferson for the touchdown equity. And I don't think that's a fluke. That's something we can definitely argue as regression over the offseason, saying clearly Thielen won't be that good again. But for this season, I'm just riding the wave, and I think he's the better outright play. And then, of course, I'd run it back with DJ Shark. If for some reason DJ Shark is like surprisingly downgraded, I would go Keelan Cole, who ran around % of Glennon's dropbacks and had 2 walk-in touchdowns. Not negated, but Glennon just overthrew him. So Keelan Cole will be my play there, but DJ Shark if he's healthy. And Tannehill double stacked with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Or if you want to get really freaky, Corey Davis and Anthony Ferkser, and then probably run it back with Nick Chubb or Jarvis Landry. Because despite I do agree Rashad Higgins is going to be out there for a ton of usage, but I don't think the ownership for Landry will still come in high despite what he did last week. So I think I'll still just take Landry. I could be wrong as well in that note.
So I'm looking up Landry right now to see where he's at. He is, I mean, you're right. Not on FanDuel. On DraftKings, at least according to FTN, they have him at 4% on DraftKings, but 12 on FanDuel.
Interesting.
I mean, if people are looking at game logs, Jarvis Landry's only had 1 game in forever, and Daigle, you keep mentioning this, and you're right. It's those weather games got in the way of all of the Odell Beckham splits. Like Odell was dominating a target share, of course. Odell Beckham's a stud. But after that, there was a bunch of wind games and rain games that clogged up things. So, yeah, I think that Jarvis Landry is closer to like a wide receiver 2 than like a flex guy. And that's kind of how the game log watchers are probably viewing him.
It's going to be hard to remember all those in the offseason, too. Whenever we're doing splits and articles and whatnot, we always have to keep each other in check and remind them 3 games for the Browns you have to throw completely out the window because it didn't matter at all.
Well, good news is it looks like we got a clear weather slate this week, like for everybody.
Finally, let's go.
Finally. With that being said, any notes, Jake, that we may have missed on that you want to get out there on this slate? A player in particular, a stack in particular, anything we might not have covered?
Let's see. We hit the Rams, the Seahawks, Atlanta. Oh, I'll give you one more. The one that I will go back to. Oh no, wait, this is a Monday game. Forget it. Monday game. I was going to bring up Raheem Mostert, so screw that.
It's a crazy schedule. Yeah, even though Hayden and I are also like Raheem Mostert this week.
Love Raheem Mostert.
Yeah,
I said this last week, and I had a lot of him last week, is because I hate Shanahan. We all hate Shanahan, but the one thing he's proven is he loves Raheem Mostert. That's the only guy he ever loves and will consistently use. So outside of that, I'm just scrolling through, and no, I think we hit everything that I had. Damian Harris, there's one more. Damian Harris, only on FanDuel because obviously the pass catching. But the one thing the Chargers have been not obliterated by, but I will say susceptible to, are the between the tackle powers, get the touchdown at the goal line. This is more of a dart throw too, because if a Damian Harris day is a Damian Harris day, you want a touchdown in 100 yards. But this could happen. This could be the Damian Harris type game because of how the Chargers are susceptible to running backs.
And he took on Rex Burkhead's receiving role, just one fewer route quietly than James White last week. So actually a plus despite the box score favoring James White. Hayden, any notes we may have missed here?
Myles Gaskin, that's could be the key. That's all I'll write off on.
And with that, Jake, at All In Kid on Twitter, tell the people where they can and all of your content.
Yeah, over at The Athletic, which we had a Black Friday through Cyber Monday special. It's $1 a month for the entire month. You might be lucky if you still get it. Just go click and see if you do. If you don't, at worst case scenario, you get $1 a week. So it's not as good, but just make sure.
Athletic is already like cheap enough, and it has like every bit of pertinent information you would need, and you get everything, literally everything under the sun for that one sum.
I was texting Mark Cabali during this to be like, I told you at the top of the show, I was like, is James Conner potentially coming back? And he's like, most likely not. So I'm trying to get information from our own beat writers.
I think we have like a Roto World sub, but also this is not hashtag how rich. It's just the sub is so cheap. I have my own as well. It's just like I just let it run. Like it's fine. I go back and I read everything all the time. Hayden at Hayden Winks on Twitter. What about the rest of your work for this week?
Injury report, getting some blurbs up on Roto World. I'm going to go back to the blueprint, fill in, update everything. I have to write up Devontae Booker and all the Friday breaking news. So I'm on injury reports for the rest of the night.
At Not J Daigle on Twitter. We'll be back at the same channel, whatever you're watching at, for the Sunday morning start sit questions that I don't answer otherwise. So an hour before kickoff, come join us. Also, Roto World Football Podcast. The preview show is already up. So until then, good luck, everyone. Get in the playoffs.